やっほー、また会えたね。新しい方もようこそ私のリビングルームへ。今日は日本語を勉強するときに YouTube を使っている方法について話したいと思います。Hey there, I see you're back for more. If you're new, welcome to the living room for language learners. Did you know that there is so much knowledge stored in YouTube for free for you to use at your own discretion? Yes, you can even use it to help you study Japanese. So today, let's talk about how we can use YouTube for studying Japanese. Before that, don't forget to follow me on your music and podcast platforms, and make sure you like and subscribe my YouTube channel, The Living Room for Language Learners Podcast. For any questions, comments, or episode suggestions, follow me on Instagram at thelivingroom411. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the sound of my podcast. Textbooks are great, but sometimes the explanations can make absolutely no sense. That's when you go to YouTube. There are so many people who are natives in Japanese, professional teachers, and even knowledgeable non-natives that have studied Japanese and are now teaching it. There are so many different perspectives and ways to explain the same concept, so it's up to you to find the right one that fits yourself. Take me as an example. I had trouble understanding te form from my teachers and textbooks at university. That led me to go to YouTube to find a better explanation. Then, I found a YouTuber called Miku Real Japanese. Her episode on te form blew me away at how I could understand it more easily. She was funny, relatable, and easy to understand, so every time I was having trouble with grammar, I'd always search her videos first. Miku-sensei might not be right for you, but there are plenty more out there. For example, the Japanese man Yuta, Onomappu, Japanese Pod 101, Konnichiwa My Dude with Ray Sensei, and many more. There are also many YouTubers that aren't as famous, but they have great content, so you shouldn't scroll past their videos because you never know what you might find. If you haven't already noticed, there are many Japanese YouTubers that claim to teach the real Japanese. I would argue that textbooks do teach you the real Japanese, but sometimes not the one that is commonly used in casual situations. That's why you go to YouTube, because it's also important to learn how to talk in different situations. Sometimes, when you're too polite with your Japanese friends, they might feel like you're giving them the cold shoulder. So YouTube is the best place to get tons of listening practice with casual Japanese from native speakers. Make sure you watch videos about things that you would normally watch in your native language, so you don't feel like it's a hassle to watch. That way, you're having fun unconsciously learning casual grammatical structures, expressions, and slang. You don't want to sound like a walking textbook when you're speaking Japanese. For this, I recommend YouTubers that are teaching English or Japanese in Japanese, because they tend to speak more slowly and clearly. Also, if you like Japanese culture, I'd recommend watching Ask Japanese with Kathy Cat, where she interviews Japanese people in Japanese. There are also various Japanese YouTubers out there who have fun videos you can watch to satisfy your boredom while learning at the same time. If you're using YouTube for listening practice, I'd recommend using subtitles either in English or Japanese to take notes with. If you ever come across a word that repeats a lot in an episode or a phrase that you really like, you'll remember it better if you write it down, and you'll remember it even better if you put it in your flashcards and study it after. To further solidify these words in your mind, you can try using these words that you have learned in your writing or when you're speaking to someone. My way of remembering these new words is to first understand their meaning and usage, and then looking them up in other videos or trying to use them in my conversations. This tricks my brain to thinking that these words are very important, and I must remember them. Like I said in my previous episode, you can use YouTube to find other polyglots that have the same learning style as yourself. and use their techniques and recommended resources to your advantage. There's no shame in using someone else's study method. That's how I started. I used YouTubers like Ikenna and Stephen Kaufman to make my own study method and find good resources that fit me. So you can too. You can also look up YouTubers and videos that teach you how to learn more effectively with your study materials. For example, how to study more effectively with your textbooks, your games that are in Japanese, TV shows, books, and many more. Also, there are many people giving tips on how to study kanji, writing, speaking, grammar, building your vocabulary, and anything else you're struggling with. Other people have struggled so that you don't have to. And you can get their wisdom through YouTube. What's even better about YouTube is that you can also find non-native Japanese speakers to listen to learn Japanese from. Sometimes native speakers can speak a little too fast for us learners. I'd recommend a YouTuber named Dogen, who not only makes funny videos about Japanese culture, but also teaches you how to pronounce Japanese better. Pronunciation is also an important part for learning Japanese, so his videos are a very useful tool for studying. Watching other non-native people speak Japanese can also be encouraging, because if they did it, then you most definitely can too. YouTube is also a great place to find free anime and dramas in Japanese if you can't watch them from anywhere else. I often use YouTube to watch an old anime called Koji Koji. There are even subtitles in Japanese and English, which is very convenient when other platforms only have English ones. Finally, I'd recommend using YouTube to learn about Japan and Japanese culture. There are many foreigners and Japanese natives in Japan that tell you about their lives and teach you Japanese culture, which I really enjoy watching for fun. I recommend Ask Japanese, Abroad in Japan, Let's Ask Shogo, and many more. My Japanese friends also recommend foreigners to learn about Japanese history because it's actually quite interesting. That's why YouTube's so great. There's also many YouTube videos on Japanese history as well, so make sure you check them out. You can definitely use YouTube to learn Japanese, but I would only recommend using it as a supplement, not as your main source of studying. Although there are many courses on YouTube that teach you grammar at all levels, there is no solid order to what you're learning, so you'll be all over the place. It's better to use YouTube together with some sort of traditional course or textbook to keep you on track with your goals. So thank you for joining me in the living room for language learners, where we learn languages the way they should be, through community.